At exactly 11:59 p.m., beneath a blood-red moon that had not appeared over Blackthorn Keep in 83 years, Elara Vale stepped through the iron gates meant for her younger sister, and every wolf in the courtyard dropped to its knees. The sound came first. Dozens of claws scraping stone, armor shifting, men gasping as warriors who had never bowed to anyone lowered their heads in perfect, terrifying unison. Then the largest wolf among them moved. Black as a moonless forest and nearly as tall as a horse, the beast stood beside the palace steps with silver eyes fixed on Elara. He did not growl. He bent one powerful foreleg and bowed. The silence that followed was so complete, Elara could hear snow melting against the lantern above her head. At the top of the stairs stood Alpha King Cassian, dressed in black royal armor edged with silver, his broad shoulders rigid beneath a fur-lined cloak. He was more imposing than the portraits had suggested, with dark hair swept back from a severe face and eyes the color of a winter storm. Those eyes moved from the kneeling wolves to Elara's plain gray traveling dress, then to the empty space behind her where a royal bride's procession should have been. "Where is Lysandra Vale?" he asked. His voice carried across the courtyard without effort. Elara lifted her chin. "My sister was unable to travel." "Unable?" A councilman near the stairs gave a soft, mocking laugh. Cassian descended one step. "The treaty promised me the wolf-blooded daughter of House Vale." Elara could feel hundreds of eyes on her, weighing her worn cloak, her unadorned hair, the lack of glowing wolf marks along her skin. She had spent 28 years being examined that way. Human. Defective. Useful only when someone needed a burden carried quietly. Cassian looked at her as if her presence were an insult carefully wrapped and delivered to his door. "Take her back," he said. "I will not marry another man's unwanted daughter." The words struck exactly where they were meant to. A few nobles laughed. Someone whispered, "A leftover bride." Elara felt the old humiliation rising in her throat, bitter and familiar, but she did not let it reach her face. Her father's final warning returned to her. Do not embarrass this family. He had sent her north because Lysandra believed Cassian would refuse a human substitute and demand the proper bride. Elara had been meant to hold the deadline, absorb the rejection, and return home before anyone important suffered embarrassment. She looked at the wolves still kneeling around her. Then she looked back at the king. "You may reject me, Your Majesty," she said evenly. "But if you reject the first unmarried daughter of House Vale who crossed your threshold before midnight, you reject the treaty with her." Cassian's expression changed almost imperceptibly. "The treaty names House Vale. It also names a deadline." Elara glanced at the great clock above the gate. The final bell began to toll, and I crossed before it expired. The 12th strike rolled across the frozen courtyard. For one suspended moment, no one moved. Then Cassian's black wolf rose and walked toward her. Guards reached for their swords, but the king lifted one hand, stopping them. The wolf circled Elara slowly, his breath steaming in the cold. She should have been afraid. Every childhood lesson had taught her that an alpha wolf could smell weakness, fear, deceit. Yet when the beast lowered his head near her hand, she felt only an ache of recognition she could not explain. Beneath her glove, something on her wrist burned. She pulled her hand against her chest before anyone could see. Cassian's jaw tightened. "Varek." The wolf looked back at him, but did not return. That seemed to disturb the king more than the bowing. "Put Lady Elara in the east wing," Cassian ordered. He emphasized the title as though it tasted unpleasant. "The council will review the treaty at first light." A pale woman standing near the doors smiled without warmth. "The east wing has not been used in years, my king. Then it will offer her privacy." Elara heard what he meant. Distance, darkness, somewhere to store an inconvenient woman until the men in power decided what she was worth. The east wing was colder inside than the winter courtyard. A silent maid led Elara through halls covered in white sheets and portraits turned toward the wall. The room prepared for her contained a narrow bed, a dead fireplace, and a window framed by brittle black vines. The latch on the door hung loose from the wood. "Does it lock?" Elara asked. The maid avoided her eyes. "It used to." A tray waited on the table with bread, cheese, and a porcelain pot of tea. The maid hurried away before Elara could ask her name. Once alone, Elara removed her gloves and studied the faint red mark circling her left wrist. It looked almost like a crescent moon, though she had never seen it before that night. She rubbed it until the heat faded, then turned to the tea. Steam rose from the cup, carrying the scent of winter mint and something sweeter beneath it. Elara had grown up in a house where no one remembered she was in the room. It had taught her many things. People spoke freely near invisible daughters. Servants forgot to hide bottles. Healers left books open. Elara had spent years studying plants because knowledge was the one form of power her father had never thought to take from her. She dipped the tip of a silver hairpin into the tea. The metal darkened instantly. Silverleaf, deadly to wolves, slower in humans, but concentrated enough it could stop the heart before dawn. Elara stared at the cup, listening to the wind push against the broken window. She had been inside Blackthorn Keep less than an hour. Someone already wanted her dead. She poured the tea into a small glass vial from her traveling case and hid it inside her sleeve. Then she dragged a heavy chair beneath the broken door handle and slept with a brass candle stand beside her hand. By morning, the entire palace knew that the human bride had survived the night. At sunset, the council summoned her to the great hall for the welcome feast that had originally been prepared for Lysandra. Hundreds of candles burned beneath a vaulted ceiling painted with silver wolves. Cassian sat at the head of the long table, expressionless in black ceremonial robes, while the members of his court drank and whispered around him. Elara entered alone. She wore the only formal gown she had brought, dark blue and modest, without jewels. The conversations thinned as she passed. Cassian's gaze followed her longer than it should have, though his face remained cold. Before Elara could reach the empty seat at the far end, trumpets sounded outside. The doors opened. Lysandra Vale entered beneath a shower of snowflakes, radiant in a silver gown embroidered with white fur and moonstone. She looked every inch the bride the court had expected, golden-haired, graceful, smiling, her wolf mark glowing visibly above her collarbone. Their father walked beside her, proud and unashamed. Elara felt something inside her go very still. Lysandra stopped in front of Cassian and bowed. "Forgive the delay, Your Majesty. I came as soon as I learned there had been a misunderstanding." Her eyes moved to Elara. "My sister has always been eager to feel useful." Laughter moved through the room. Cassian did not join it, but he did not stop it either. Lysandra took the seat nearest him, the position of honor, and held out her empty goblet toward Elara. "Pour my wine, sister." Elara looked at the goblet, then at Cassian. He remained silent. That silence hurt more than his rejection at the gate, because now he knew someone had tried to poison her, or at least he would soon know, and still he permitted the court to reduce her to entertainment. Elara lifted the wine pitcher. "Of course." She filled Lysandra's cup without spilling a drop. Then, before setting down the pitcher, she turned toward the elderly royal scribe seated near the council. "Master Soren, would you read the marriage treaty aloud?" The room quieted. Lysandra's smile tightened. Cassian leaned back in his chair. "This is neither the time nor the place. It is a feast honoring the king's bride," Elara said. "I can think of no better time to confirm who she is." Their father rose. "Elara, enough." She did not look at him. Master Soren glanced nervously at Cassian. After a long pause, the king nodded. A servant brought the ancient parchment. The scribe broke the seal and began reading in a trembling voice. Most of it concerned borders, trade, and military protection. Then he reached the final marriage clause. The first unwed daughter of House Vale to cross the Draven threshold before the blood moon fades shall be bound to the Alpha crown, and through that union the peace shall endure. The words settled over the hall. Lysandra's goblet slipped slightly in her hand. Cassian's eyes moved to Elara. Master Soren swallowed. Lady Elara crossed the threshold on the 14th, before midnight. Lady Lysandra crossed 3 days later. "That clause was written for a wolf," Lysandra said sharply. "It does not say so," Elara replied. "She has no wolf," their father snapped. "She cannot carry the Alpha line." Cassian rose, and the hall fell silent under the weight of his power. His alpha aura pressed against the room so heavily that several wolves lowered their eyes. Elara remained standing. "Can the clause be dissolved?" Cassian asked. Master Soren looked ill. Only if the treaty is dissolved with it, my king. And if the treaty falls, the southern border returns to a state of war. Cassian's hands closed around the edge of the table. For the first time, Elara saw the shape of the trap around him. She also saw what he reached for first, not truth, not fairness, but escape. Find another interpretation, he ordered. There is none, Elara said. His gaze snapped to hers. You knew. I suspected, and you said nothing. You did not ask. He came around the table and stopped inches from her. Up close, his power was almost physical, heat beneath ice. You manipulated your way into my court. No, my family manipulated me into your court. Your law kept me here. A human cannot rule wolves. Elara held his stare. Then perhaps your wolves bowed because they know something their king does not. A low growl rolled through the hall. It came from beneath Cassian's skin. His eyes flashed silver. Varric was listening. Cassian ordered everyone out except Elara. When the doors closed, the grandeur of the hall seemed to collapse into something narrower and more dangerous. You will remain in the East Wing until I decide how to proceed, he said. And Lysandra? She will remain as an honored guest. Elara laughed once without humor. How fortunate for her. Do not provoke her. She ordered me to serve her at my own betrothal feast. You embarrassed her publicly. I read a document. You weaponized it. Elara stepped closer. No, Cassian. The men who wrote that law weaponized it. My father weaponized it when he sent me here to be rejected in her place. You weaponized it when you called me unwanted before your entire court. I simply refused to bleed quietly. Something in his face shifted when she used his name. You will address me as your king. Then behave like one. The silence between them sharpened. No one had likely spoken to him that way in years. Elara expected anger. Instead, for the briefest moment, she saw something more unsettling. Interest. Then the doors opened, and Lord Malrek Thorn entered without waiting to be invited. His graying hair was tied neatly behind him, his smile calm and paternal. My king, there is a matter requiring discretion. His eyes flicked toward Elara. A servant claims Lady Elara accused Lady Lysandra's household of poisoning her. Cassian looked at Elara. Did you? She removed the vial from her sleeve and placed it on the table. The tea left in my room contained silverleaf. Malrek examined it without touching. A dramatic accusation based on a cup of tea and a dead vine outside my window. Plants die in winter, not from the roots outward within an hour. Cassian picked up the vial, his expression turning hard. Who served it? A maid wearing Lysandra's crest. Malrek sighed. Household uniforms are easily borrowed. So are excuses, Elara said. Cassian ordered guards to find the maid quietly. Quietly. The word told Elara everything. He did not want justice, he wanted containment. That night, she woke to the scrape of wood against stone. The chair beneath her door shifted. Elara's eyes opened in darkness. The latch rose slowly. She reached for the candlestand, just as a masked figure slipped inside. Moonlight flashed across a silver blade. The attacker lunged. Elara rolled from the bed, the knife cutting through the pillow where her throat had been. She swung the candlestand hard against the attacker's wrist. The blade struck the floor. A gloved hand caught her hair and dragged her backward. Pain tore across her scalp. Elara drove her elbow into the attacker's ribs, twisted free, and ran into the corridor barefoot. "Help!" Her voice echoed through the abandoned wing. The attacker followed, faster than she expected. A hand closed around her shoulder. Then a roar shook dust from the ceiling. Cassian came around the corner, half transformed, silver eyes blazing, claws extended from his hands, fangs visible beneath his upper lip. He moved with such speed that Elara barely saw him strike. The attacker flew against the wall, recovered, and threw a small glass sphere at the floor. Black smoke exploded through the hallway. By the time the guards arrived, the masked figure was gone. Cassian turned toward Elara. Blood ran from a shallow cut near her collarbone. His gaze fixed on it, and something wild entered his face. "Who touched you?" The question did not sound entirely human. Elara held up the dropped silver blade. A small crest had been carved into the handle, a white rose, Lysandra's symbol. Malrek appeared moments later with the guards. "Convenient," he murmured. Cassian's fury cooled into calculation. "Seal the east wing. No one enters or leaves without my permission." Elara stared at him. "You are locking me in? I am keeping you alive, by putting me back in the room where 2 people have already tried to kill me. Guards will be posted, outside a locked door. This is not a discussion." Cassian's alpha command struck the corridor like thunder. The guards bowed their heads. Elara's knees nearly weakened beneath the force, but she remained upright. "You know that crest may have been planted," she said. "I know. You know someone inside your palace wants me dead." "Yes. And your answer is to hide me." His jaw tightened. "Until I know whom I can trust." Elara stepped backward into the room as the guards prepared to close the door. "You do not protect people, Cassian. You hide them whenever protecting them becomes inconvenient." The door shut between them. The lock turned from the outside. For several seconds there was only silence. Then Elara heard Cassian's footsteps retreating down the hall. Another sound remained. Slow breathing. Heavy claws against stone. She looked through the narrow gap beneath the door and saw black fur. Varric had lain down outside her room. Cassian had walked away, but his wolf refused to leave her. For 3 days, Elara remained locked inside the east wing while Blackthorn Keep pretended nothing was wrong. Meals arrived through the door without a word. Guards changed shifts every 6 hours. No one answered when she asked whether the maid who served the poisoned tea had been found. No one explained why Lysandra was allowed to walk freely through the palace while the woman who had been attacked twice was treated like a prisoner. Yet every night, long after the corridors fell silent, Elara heard the same slow breathing outside her door. Varric stayed there in the darkness, a massive shadow between her and the rest of the palace. Cassian never came. His wolf did. On the 4th morning, Elara discovered that one of the carved panels behind the wardrobe did not fit the wall correctly. Years of being ignored had made her patient with hidden things. She pressed along the edge until the panel shifted inward, revealing a narrow passage thick with dust. The tunnel descended behind the walls and opened into the royal archives, a circular chamber filled with shelves, maps, and bloodline records older than the kingdom itself. Elara spent hours reading by candlelight. She found treaties that had been revised, family trees with names scratched away, and 7 women from House Vale who had vanished from public records over the last 2 centuries. Each had been born without a visible wolf. Each had died young, according to the official histories. Yet beside 3 of the names, someone had written the same symbol in faded silver ink, a crescent moon divided by a crown. Near sunset, Elara found a portrait hidden behind a stack of war ledgers. The woman in it wore no wolf mark, yet dozens of wolves knelt around her. She had Elara's gray eyes. Beneath the image were the words, "First Moon Queen, Althea Vale, born of 2 bloods, obeyed by force of neither." Elara was still staring at the portrait when a voice spoke behind her. "You were ordered to remain in the east wing." Cassian stood at the entrance, dressed in black, his expression unreadable. "I did remain there," Elara said. "Your ancestors simply built a passage out of it." His gaze moved to the portrait in her hands. For the first time since she had met him, she saw something close to fear. "Where did you find that?" "Behind the records your court forgot to destroy." Cassian took the portrait, studied it, then set it down more carefully than she expected. "These archives are restricted." "So is poison, apparently. Your palace seems flexible about restrictions." He ignored the insult. "You cannot wander alone while someone is trying to kill you. Then stop locking me where they know exactly where to find me." His jaw tightened. The maid disappeared before the guards reached her quarters. "And the blade?" "The crest was forged. So Lysandra may not have ordered the attack, may not have, but you still will not question her publicly." Cassian looked away for half a second, and that was answer enough. Elara moved toward the hidden passage. "You are very brave when no one important is watching." His hand closed around her wrist before she passed. The crescent mark beneath her skin flared hot. Cassian released her immediately. but his silver eyes darkened. "What was that?" "I was hoping you knew." Before he could answer, shouting echoed from the corridor beyond the archives. A young kitchen servant was dragged into the room by 2 guards. A loaf of bread clutched against her chest. Commander of the guard, a broad man named Garrick, shoved her forward. "Caught stealing from the winter stores, my king." The girl fell to her knees. "Please. My sister has 3 children in the valley. The frost killed their grain." Garrick waited for Cassian's judgment. Elara watched the king's face turn hard and official. "The law requires dismissal and 10 lashes. The girl began to cry. Elara stepped between them. "How much did she take?" Garrick frowned. "1 loaf and a sack of oats." "Then perhaps the kingdom will survive." "This is not your concern," Cassian said. "It became my concern when hunger was brought into the room." The girl looked at Elara with desperate gratitude. Cassian's gaze shifted toward the guards. "Leave us." When the doors closed, he crouched before the servant. "Take 2 more sacks. Garrick will log them under my household account. You will report to the warm kitchens tomorrow. Your wages will be doubled." The girl stared at him in disbelief. "Thank you, my king. Tell no one." After she left, Elara studied him. "There it is again." "What?" "A kind thing done in darkness." Cassian stood. "The court would call it weakness." "Then your court has confused cruelty with strength. My father ruled these packs for 40 years. He taught me that the moment a king is seen choosing one person, his enemies know where to place the knife." "And did no one ever place a knife anyway?" His expression cooled. "You speak of things you do not understand." "I understand enough. Your father taught you to hide every decent instinct until no one could prove you had one." Cassian stepped closer. "He ended 2 wars. And how did he die?" The question landed harder than she intended. Cassian went still. "Alone," he said at last, but certain he was right. For the first time, Elara felt something other than anger toward him. Not forgiveness, not trust, only the uncomfortable awareness that the man beneath the crown had been trained to confuse loneliness with discipline. Their eyes held for one quiet moment before the door opened and Lord Malric entered, smiling as though he had heard nothing. "My king, the northern inspection is ready." His gaze moved to Elara. "Lady Elara should remain secure." "Lady Elara will accompany me," Cassian said. Malric's smile thinned. The road north cut through black pine forests and frozen valleys. Elara rode in a closed carriage with 2 guards, while Cassian and a dozen warriors traveled ahead on horseback. Near dusk, the road narrowed beside a ravine. The first arrow struck the driver through the shoulder. The second shattered the carriage window. Horses screamed. The carriage tipped sideways as wolves burst from the trees, their eyes glowing an unnatural red. Elara hit the floor hard. A guard opened the door and was dragged away before he could draw his sword. Then Varric appeared. Cassian shifted in midair, bones breaking and reforming with brutal speed as the enormous black wolf crashed into the attackers. The forest erupted in snarls, snow, and bloodless flashes of silver steel. Elara crawled from the overturned carriage and saw an archer above the ravine aiming directly at Varric. "Cassian!" The arrow flew. Varric turned too late. The silver tip buried itself beneath his shoulder. His roar shook the trees. The remaining rogues fled as Cassian collapsed into the snow, shifting back into human form with the arrow still lodged in his flesh. Elara reached him first. "Do not touch it," he warned through clenched teeth. "It is silver. I know. It will burn you. Not as quickly as it will kill you." She dragged his arm over her shoulder and forced him toward an abandoned hunting chapel, half buried beneath snow. Inside, she tore open his shirt, heated a knife over a candle, and cut around the wound. Cassian's body shook as the poison spread dark veins across his chest. "You should leave," he said. "The rogues may return. You are not giving orders well enough to be convincing." She broke the arrow shaft, pulled the silver tip free, and pressed crushed winter root into the wound. Cassian gripped the stone floor until his claws emerged. Then Varric took over. The black wolf replaced him in a wave of shadow and collapsed beside the dying fire. Elara sat against the wall, exhausted. Slowly, Varric lowered his massive head into her lap. She froze. His breathing steadied beneath her hand. "You trust me," she whispered. The wolf closed his eyes. "That makes one of you." When Cassian woke near dawn, he was human again, his head resting against her thigh, her cloak draped over both of them. Their faces were close enough that Elara could feel his breath. For one dangerous second, neither moved. His gaze dropped to her mouth. The crescent mark on her wrist burned again. Elara pulled away first. "Saving your life does not erase what happened at the palace." Cassian sat up slowly. "I did not ask you to erase it." "Good. But you stayed. Because leaving you to die would have made me more like your court than I am willing to become." Commander Rowan Ash arrived with reinforcements before noon. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and calm, in a way that did not demand attention. He examined the broken arrow and immediately noticed a flaw in the crest stamped into its shaft. "This is not Lysandra's seal," he said. "It is a copy made by someone who wanted us to blame her." Malrek, who arrived shortly after, dismissed the conclusion as speculation. Rowan ignored him and turned to Elara. "You saved the king. He was inconveniently difficult to carry." Rowan smiled. Cassian did not. During the return journey, Rowan explained that food meant for human settlements near the northern border had been redirected through accounts controlled by Malrek's office. Elara asked to see the records. Cassian refused. "You will return to the East Wing. People are starving, and someone is trying to kill you. Those facts may be connected." "You are not going north." Rowan looked between them. She should be allowed to decide what risk she accepts. Cassian's alpha aura filled the carriage so suddenly the windows rattled. "This is not your concern, Commander." Elara met Cassian's eyes. "Are you angry because you distrust him, or because he speaks to me as if I am free?" Cassian said nothing. 2 nights later, the council summoned Elara to the throne room. A letter lay open on the central table. It bore her seal and claimed she intended to flee with Rowan, transfer the treaty, and weaken Cassian's rule. Malrek read each line aloud before the full court. Elara denied writing it. Rowan confirmed he had received no such message. Cassian examined the seal. She could see he doubted the evidence. She could also see the court watching him, waiting to learn whether he would choose truth or safety. "Until the letter is verified," Cassian said, "Lady Elara will return to the East Wing." The disappointment that moved through her was quieter than pain, and far more final. Elara removed the silver betrothal chain from her neck and laid it on the table. "You wanted me silent, grateful, and easy to store," she said. "I mistook your private kindness for courage. That was my mistake." Cassian's face hardened. "Elara, no. You do not get to say my name like it means something only when the room is empty." That night, she found the legal clause she needed. A bride could suspend the marriage if the groom failed to defend her honor before his council. Before sunrise, Rowan arranged a horse and a safe route north. Cassian came to her room as she fastened her cloak. "Do not go." She turned toward him. "Give me one honest reason to stay." His silence stretched too long. At last, he said, "The kingdom needs the treaty." Elara's eyes filled, but she refused to let the tears fall. "That is not a reason for me to stay. It is a reason for you to use me." She walked past him. He did not stop her. "If you were Elara, would you stay long enough to expose the traitor, or leave a king who protected you only when no one was watching? Tell us what you would choose." Elara crossed the outer boundary of Blackthorn Keep just as the first light touched the mountains. The instant her horse passed beyond the final standing stone, every wolf in the kingdom began to howl. The sound rose from the forest, the villages, the palace towers, thousands of voices twisted with pain. Back in the throne room, Cassian collapsed to one knee as a black mark burned across his heart. The moon tree in the courtyard cracked from root to crown, its silver leaves turning dark. Varric roared inside him with such force that every window in the keep shattered. The rejected bride had not merely been bound to the treaty. Somehow she had been holding the entire kingdom together. Elara did not hear the wolves begin to howl until Rowan's horse reared beneath him. The sound came from every direction at once, rolling across the mountains like a storm made of grief. Wolves cried out from the forest ridges, from distant villages, from watchtowers hidden beyond the snow. Their voices were not angry. They were suffering. Elara pulled her horse to a stop and looked back toward Blackthorn Keep. Far behind them, a flash of silver light split the morning sky above the palace, followed by the deep crack of something ancient breaking. Rowan turned in the saddle. The moon tree. What about it? It only reacts when the life of the pack is threatened. Elara's fingers tightened around the reins. Then Cassian will deal with it. Rowan studied her face. You do not believe that. What I believe no longer matters to him. She urged her horse forward before he could answer. The howling followed them for miles. By noon they reached Greyhaven, a settlement pressed against the northern border where humans, half-bloods, and wolves without noble rank had learned to survive together because no one else wanted them. The village should have smelled of smoke and fresh bread. Instead, the air carried wet ash, sickness, and hunger. Several roofs had collapsed beneath old snow. Children in oversized coats watched from doorways while elderly villagers stood in a ration line that ended before the food table began. Elara dismounted slowly. She had known the shipments were being stolen. Knowing was different from seeing. A woman with gray hair approached Rowan and bowed. "Commander, we received nothing from the capital again." "How long?" 3 weeks. Her eyes shifted toward Elara. "Who is she?" Rowan opened his mouth, but Elara answered first. "Someone who can count empty shelves." She spent the afternoon in the storehouse, comparing delivery records with what remained. 6 wagons of grain, dried meat, and medicine had supposedly arrived during the month. None had. The seals on the documents belonged to Malrek's office. Elara found the same crescent and crown symbol hidden beneath one forged signature, as if someone had pressed it into the wax before covering it with another seal. She touched the mark and felt heat beneath her skin. That evening, instead of taking the room prepared for her, she helped in the village infirmary. She mixed willow bark for fevers, cleaned wounds, and divided the last jar of honey among 3 coughing families. No one called her defective. No one asked why she had no wolf. They only asked whether the medicine would last until morning. For the first time in her life, Elara understood how peaceful usefulness could feel when it was freely chosen. 3 days passed. The howling grew worse. Some wolves shifted without warning and could not change back. Others lost their sense of direction and wandered into frozen rivers. Rowan received reports from across the kingdom. Livestock panicking, pack bonds failing, pregnant she-wolves losing their ability to hear their unborn pups. Elara read each message with a growing knot beneath her ribs. She told herself it was not her responsibility. Cassian had a council, an army, an entire kingdom trained to obey him. But every night, the crescent mark around her wrist burned brighter. She dreamed of a silver-white wolf trapped behind a wall of black glass, striking the barrier again and again until blood darkened its paws. Each time Elara woke, she heard a voice inside her mind, faint but clear. Not yet. On the 4th morning, a royal messenger arrived, half dead from exhaustion. He carried no formal summons, only a strip of black cloth stained with Cassian's blood and a letter written in the Moon Oracle's hand. Rowan read it first. His expression changed. "What does it say?" Elara asked. He gave her the letter. "The moon tree is dying. The Alpha's wolf is tearing against his body. The pack bowed because the first moon queen has returned. If she does not awaken, the kingdom will fracture before the next full moon." Elara read the words twice. "They think this is me. They know it is." "No," she turned away. "I am human. You saw the portrait. A portrait proves resemblance, not blood. Your family erased women from the records. Someone sealed your history. That does not mean I can save a kingdom." Rowan stepped closer but did not touch her. "No, it means someone was afraid you could." At Blackthorn Keep, Cassian stood before the ruined moon tree while black cracks spread through its silver trunk. He had not slept since Elara left. Every time Varric surged against him, pain split through his chest where the dark mark burned over his heart. The court watched from a distance, frightened by the way their Alpha trembled without showing weakness. Malrek stood at his right hand, offering calm explanations. "The human disrupted the treaty. Her departure has destabilized the bond." Cassian turned toward him. You knew the treaty was tied to the moon tree. Malrek's face remained composed. I suspected. You knew her bloodline. There were old rumors. Cassian crossed the space between them and closed one hand around Malrek's throat. The council gasped. My father erased those records. Your father protected the throne. From what? Cassian's claws broke through his fingertips. From her? Malrek's eyes narrowed. From what women like her become when wolves mistake compassion for authority, Cassian released him with enough force to send him against the stone steps. Search his chambers. The guards hesitated. Malrek was the highest-ranking advisor in the kingdom. Cassian let his Alpha command strike the courtyard. Now, they obeyed. Within an hour, the guards found forged seals, silverleaf stores, correspondence with border raiders, and payments linked to the attack on Elara's carriage. They also found letters from Lord Vale approving the sealing of a newborn girl's wolf 28 years earlier. Cassian read the final letter alone. The child carries Althea's blood. If the wolf awakens, she may command packs without an alpha bond. Seal it before she learns what she is. Let the younger daughter inherit the family's future. Cassian's hand shook. Elara had not been born without power. Her own family had buried it. Lysandra was brought to the throne room before sunset. She entered without her jewels, her face pale but proud. Cassian threw Malrek's letters across the table. How much did you know? I knew he wanted Elara gone. Gone from the palace or dead. Lysandra looked away. He said she would be sent home. 2 people tried to kill her. I did not order that. You allowed the court to believe she was beneath you. Because she was always beneath me. The words came out quickly, then seemed to horrify even Lysandra. Her eyes filled with anger rather than tears. Do you know what our father told me every day of my life? That I was the daughter who mattered. That my wolf, my face, my marriage would protect our house. Elara was the warning he used whenever I failed. Do not be weak like your sister. Do not become useless like Elara. Then she walked through your gates, and every wolf bowed to her. What was I supposed to be after that? Cassian's voice lowered. Yourself. Lysandra laughed bitterly. That is easy for a king to say. Did you help Malrek forge the letter? After a long silence, she nodded. I gave him a sample of Elara's seal. And the blade with your crest? He said it would frighten her into leaving. You believed him? I wanted to. Cassian looked at the woman he had once considered politically perfect and saw how completely ambition had hollowed her out. You will remain under guard. And Elara? I am going to bring her home. Lysandra's expression twisted. Because she is your mate. Cassian looked toward the broken moon tree. Because I failed her before I knew what she was. I will not make the same failure now that the entire kingdom knows. In Greyhaven, Elara's power awakened not during a ceremony, but during a fire. Malrek's soldiers arrived after midnight wearing border armor and carrying torches. They sealed the main road, set the grain store ablaze, and shouted that the attack had been ordered by Blackthorn Keep. Panic spread faster than flame. Villagers ran into the snow. Wolves shifted and lost control under the strain of the dying pack bond. Rowan drew his sword and ordered defenders to the eastern barricade. Elara ran toward the infirmary as burning debris rained across the street. Inside, smoke had filled the ceiling. An elderly woman lay trapped beneath a fallen beam, shielding a small boy with her body. Elara dropped beside them and tried to lift the wood. It did not move. Flames climbed the wall. Take him, the woman coughed. Leave me. No. Elara pulled until her palms split. The beam remained. Outside, someone screamed her name. The roof cracked overhead. Something inside, Elara broke open. The crescent mark around her wrist blazed silver. Pain tore through her bones, but beneath it came a strength so vast it felt like standing inside a storm. The voice from her dreams thundered through her mind. Now, light exploded from Elara's body. The beam lifted as if struck from below. Her hands became paws, her breath became a roar, and silver-white fur swept across her skin. The transformation should have felt foreign. Instead, it felt like coming home after 28 years of exile. Celine rose in the burning infirmary, enormous and radiant, her eyes glowing pale blue. She carried the woman and child through the flames one at a time. When she stepped into the street, every wolf, villager, soldier, rogue froze. Malrek's men had been preparing to attack. One by one, their heads lowered. Some collapsed fully into the snow. Elara could feel their fear, hunger, confusion, and the force pressing against their minds. It was not loyalty. It was control. Malrek had bound them through corrupted alpha magic. Elara opened her jaws, but the command that left her was not spoken aloud. Remember yourselves. The invisible chains shattered. The wolves staggered as if waking from a nightmare. Instead of turning on the villagers, they faced Malrek's soldiers. Elara did not order them to kill. Protect the innocent. That was all. The wolves obeyed. By the time Cassian reached Greyhaven, the fires were nearly out. He found Elara standing in the center of the village in her silver-white wolf form, surrounded by wolves who had chosen to guard the people they had been sent to destroy. Celine turned toward him. Varek surged forward before Cassian could stop him. The black wolf broke free, forcing the shift. For one breathless moment, the two beasts stood across from each other beneath the falling snow. Varek lowered his head. Cassian felt no command forcing him down. He chose to kneel. The sight silenced the entire village. When Elara shifted back, the transformation left her shaking and exposed to the cold. Cassian removed his cloak and wrapped it around her without touching more than necessary. "Do not," she whispered when he reached for her face. His hand stopped immediately. "I came to bring you back. Because your wolves are suffering." Yes. The honesty hurt, but he continued. "And because I discovered the truth. Your father sealed your wolf. Malrek ordered the attacks. I should have seen it sooner. You should have believed me sooner. Yes. No defense. No royal explanation." Elara looked at him carefully. "Would you be here if the moon tree were not dying?" Cassian's face tightened. "I do not know when I began wanting you to stay for reasons that had nothing to do with the treaty. I only know I was too much of a coward to say it while saying it could cost me something. And now? Now losing the kingdom would hurt less than becoming the man who lost you." The words were beautiful. That was precisely why Elara did not trust them. "You do not get to discover my power and call your regret love." Cassian lowered his eyes. "I know. The bond does not erase what you did. I know, and I will not return so you can place me beside your throne and pretend the humiliation never happened. Then do not return for me." He looked toward the villagers rebuilding the burned storehouse. "Return for them. Return to expose Malrek. Return to change the laws that allowed this. And when it is over, if you still choose to leave, I will not stop you." That promise mattered more than his confession because it cost him control. Before Elara could answer, another rider came through the northern gate, blood covering one side of his face. He fell from the saddle at Rowan's feet. "Blackthorn Keep has fallen," he gasped. "Lord Malrek escaped before the search was complete. Half the council has declared for him." Cassian seized the man's shoulder. "Lysandra?" "Captured. Malrek holds her beneath the moon crown." The messenger handed Elara a strip of parchment. The writing was elegant and precise. "Surrender the Moon Queen power before sunset tomorrow, or your sister dies and the southern armies cross the border." Elara read the message in silence. Rowan stepped beside her. "You owe Lysandra nothing." "I know. She helped forge the letter. She helped turn the court against you." "I know." "Then why are you looking at the road south?" Elara folded the message. "Because if I let them kill her, Malrek wins twice. Once by turning sister against sister, and again by proving that power only changes who gets abandoned." Cassian studied her with something deeper than admiration. Shame, perhaps, because she was choosing publicly what he had always hidden. "We ride within the hour," he said. Elara met his eyes. "I am not returning as your bride." "Then return as the woman this kingdom should have listened to from the beginning." As the horses were prepared, Rowan pulled Cassian aside. Snow gathered on both men's shoulders. "She may forgive you one day," Rowan said, "but if you ever make her smaller so you can feel powerful, I will help her leave again." Cassian looked toward Elara, who was kneeling beside the injured messenger, binding his wound before her own had fully healed. "If I do that again," he said quietly, She should. Then the three of them turned toward Blackthorn Keep, where a stolen throne, a captive sister, and the man who had buried Elara's true identity were waiting beneath a dying moon. Blackthorn Keep appeared beneath the dying moon like a wounded animal refusing to fall. Smoke climbed from the western tower, the outer gates stood open, and Malrek's banners hung where the silver wolf standard had flown only days before. Elara rode between Cassian and Rowan, at the head of a small force made up of Greyhaven defenders, freed border wolves, and royal guards who had abandoned Malrek after learning the truth. No trumpets announced their return. No army waited in perfect formation. They entered through the same iron gates where Cassian had once called Elara unwanted. But this time the courtyard was lined with frightened servants, wounded soldiers, and wolves whose eyes flickered red beneath the pressure of corrupted magic. As Elara crossed the threshold, the crescent mark around her wrist ignited. The wolves turned toward her. One by one, despite Malrek's control, they lowered their heads. Cassian looked at them, then at her. "They are fighting him," he said. "No," Elara replied. "They are remembering themselves." A bell rang from the throne hall. Malrek's voice carried through the keep, amplified by alpha power. "Bring the Moon Queen to me, or Lady Lysandra Vale dies before the final bell." Elara did not slow. "He wants us angry," Rowan warned. "Angry people rush into traps." "Then we do not give him anger," Elara said. "We give him witnesses." The great hall had been transformed into a court of fear. Malrek stood beneath the moon crown, a jagged silver relic suspended above the throne by ancient chains. Members of the council knelt around him, some willingly, others held down by wolves whose eyes burned red. Lysandra was bound to a pillar near the dais, her silver gown torn, one side of her face bruised. Yet when she saw Elara enter, her first expression was not relief. It was shame. Malrek smiled. "The forgotten daughter returns." Elara walked forward wearing Cassian's black cloak over her simple border clothes, her hair loose from the ride, her hands still marked by smoke and healing wounds. She did not look like a royal bride. She looked more dangerous than one. "Release my sister," Malrek laughed softly. "You spent your life being compared to her, dismissed for her, sacrificed in her place, and still you came back. That confuses you because you believe mercy is weakness. Mercy is a story powerless people tell themselves." His gaze shifted to Cassian. "And you, the great Alpha King brought down by a human woman. Your father warned us this would happen." Cassian's face hardened. "My father helped seal her wolf. Your father protected the throne from a bloodline that could command loyalty without force." Malrek lifted one hand. A guard carried forward an iron box filled with old letters. Lord Vale knew exactly what his first daughter was. He signed the order himself. Elara's father's seal shone in the wax, even though she had already learned the truth. Seeing his approval written in his own hand cut through her more deeply than she expected. Malrek read aloud. "The child must never know her power. Let her believe herself lesser, and she will never threaten the order built around her absence." A murmur moved through the hall. Lysandra closed her eyes. Elara's grief rose hot and sharp, but she held it steady. Malrek wanted pain to make her reckless. "You have shown everyone what he did," she said. "Now show them what you want." Malrek's smile vanished. "Surrender Selene to the moon crown. Bind your power to me, and your sister lives. Refuse, and the southern army crosses the border before dawn. You cannot bind a moon queen without consent." "No, but Cassian can." He turned toward the king. "The Alpha Bond gives him the right to claim his mate. Complete the bond, command her surrender, and the crown remains yours." The court held its breath. Malrek had built the choice perfectly. Cassian could save Lysandra, stabilize the Pax, keep his throne, and possess Elara through the very bond he had once denied. All he had to do was become the man Elara feared he still was. Cassian walked toward the throne. Malrek's expression brightened. Elara watched him without moving. She had told herself she would not be surprised if he chose the kingdom. Kings always found noble words for sacrificing someone else. Cassian stopped beneath the moon crown. Then he removed the black and silver alpha circlet from his head. The sound it made when he placed it on the stone floor was small, but it silenced the hall. "A throne that requires her silence," he said, "is not a throne worth keeping." Malrek's face tightened. "Think carefully. I have spent my entire life thinking carefully enough to become a coward." Cassian turned so the entire court could see him. "Elara Vale is not my property. She is not a treaty, an heir, a weapon, or a bond I have the right to command. If keeping this crown requires me to claim her against her will, then I renounce it." The corrupted wolves shifted uneasily. Something in the hall changed. Cassian had surrendered the symbol Malrek used to justify his control, and with it, the fear holding several council members in place began to crack. Elara felt tears burn behind her eyes, not because the declaration erased his failures. It did not, but for the first time, he had chosen truth while everyone was watching. Malrek seized Lysandra by the hair and pressed a silver blade to her throat. "Then let the false bride watch the true one die." Lysandra's eyes met Elara's. "Do not give him your power," she whispered. "I helped him forge the letter. I gave him your seal. I wanted you humiliated enough to leave." Her voice broke. "I kept telling myself I did not know he would kill you, but I knew what kind of man he was, and I helped him anyway." Elara stepped closer. "Why?" Lysandra laughed through tears. "Because Father taught me that only one daughter was allowed to matter. Every time he praised me, he used you as the thing I must never become. When the wolves bowed to you, I thought your worth had stolen mine. I did not steal your future," Elara said. "They taught both of us to fight for a place at a table built to starve us." Lysandra looked toward the chain holding her wrists, then stop him from using us again. She suddenly drove her heel into Malrek's knee. The blade slipped. Elara moved at the same moment. Silver light exploded through the hall as Selene tore free. Cassian shifted into Varric, black fur and fury filling the space beside her. Malrek raised both hands and released the full force of the corrupted alpha spell. Every controlled wolf attacked at once. The throne hall erupted in claws, shattered stone, and screaming metal. Varric met the largest wolves head-on, protecting Elara's flank, while Rowan led the free guards toward Lysandra. Selene could feel the invisible chains inside the attacking wolves, each one woven from fear, hunger, and commands repeated until obedience felt like identity. She could have crushed them beneath her power. Instead, Elara reached into the bond between them and spoke the same command she had used in Greyhaven. "Remember who you were before he made fear sound like loyalty." One wolf stopped, then another. Red light faded from their eyes. Malrek screamed and forced more power through the moon crown, but the crown began to crack. The wolves turned away from Elara and faced him. Cassian drove Malrek from the dais. They struck the floor together. Man against man after both had been forced back into human form. Malrek reached for the silver blade. Cassian knocked it aside and pinned him beneath one arm. "Kill me," Malrek hissed. "Prove you are still an alpha." Cassian looked toward Elara. "No." He pulled Malrek to his feet and handed him to the guards. "You will live long enough to hear every person you starved, silenced, and controlled testify against you." The moon crown shattered above them. Its pieces fell across the empty throne. At dawn, the people of Blackthorn Keep gathered in the courtyard. Nobles, servants, wolves, humans, half-bloods, border families, and soldiers who had fought on opposite sides only hours earlier. Cassian stood without a crown. "I failed this kingdom," he said. "I mistook secrecy for wisdom and control for strength. I protected people in private while abandoning them in public. You have the right to decide whether I should remain your king." The old council expected another closed vote among noble families. Elara refused. She proposed a new council representing human settlements, servants, border commanders, healers, and wolves without noble blood. The people argued. Some feared change. Others demanded it. For hours, the courtyard became loud, imperfect, and honest. In the end, they asked Cassian to remain Alpha King under laws that limited the crown and opened the council. Then they turned toward Elara. Master Soren stepped forward. "Will you accept the title of Luna Queen?" Elara looked at the throne room, the gates, and the east wing window where someone had once tried to poison her. "Only if the title belongs to me independently of marriage," she said. "Only if I hold authority to protect the border villages and every person this kingdom once called lesser." One by one, the people agreed. Elara accepted not because Cassian had chosen her, but because she had chosen the work. That evening, beneath the first new silver leaves growing from the damaged moon tree, Cassian found her alone. The mate mark glowed faintly over his heart, but he kept his distance. "The bond is waiting," he said. "I know. I will not ask you to accept it for the kingdom. Good. And I will not pretend kneeling once repaired everything I broke." Elara looked at him. "Also good." A quiet smile touched his mouth. Then it disappeared. "My wolf knew you were his from the moment you crossed the gates. I had to learn that you were never mine to own." He held out his hand but did not move closer. "If you choose me, I want it to be because of the man I continue becoming, not because of a law, a prophecy, or a frightened kingdom." Elara studied his open hand. She remembered the cruel words at the gate, the locked door, the silence before the council. She also remembered the wounded wolf trusting her lap, the crown-striking stone, and a king surrendering power with no promise she would stay. "I do not choose you because fate says we belong together," she said. "I choose you because when honesty finally cost you everything, you told the truth." She placed her hand in his. The marks on their skin flared silver and black, meeting without consuming each other. Varek and Celine appeared beneath the moon, standing side by side as equals. Lysandra refused a comfortable exile. She returned south to help rebuild the villages her family had exploited. Elara did not offer instant forgiveness, and Lysandra did not ask for it. She accepted that remorse was only the beginning of accountability. Whether she would truly change remained a question for time, not promises. Weeks later, Elara walked through the gates of Blackthorn Keep once more. The wolves bowed again, but this time no ancient power forced them. They bowed because she had saved them without demanding obedience, defended a sister who had wronged her, and refused to become cruel merely because cruelty had once been used against her. Cassian did not stand ahead of her. He stood beside her. Sometimes the deepest wound is not rejection itself, but the belief that rejection proves we were never worthy. Elara's story reminds us that another person's failure to recognize our value does not reduce it. Love becomes meaningful only when it includes respect, courage, and freedom. Kindness hidden in private is not enough when silence allows harm in public, and forgiveness should be built on changed behavior rather than beautiful words. Elara was never the unwanted bride. She was simply surrounded by people who benefited from making her believe she was replaceable. If you believe a true alpha should earn his Luna instead of claiming her, subscribe to Royal Mate Tales. More forbidden bonds, hidden wolves, and powerful heroines are waiting beyond the next moon.